All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders has won multiple science fiction and fantasy awards since it was published in 2016. Maybe I'm flighty, but this one didn't land for me. Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is Spineless Books, your one-stop shop for all things audiobook. All the Birds in the Sky is seriously decorated. Hugo Award for Best Novel in 2017, Nebula Award for Best Novel in 2016, Locust Award for Best Fantasy in 2017, the IAFA William L. Crawford Fantasy Award in 2017, and the Goodreads Choice Award for Fantasy in 2016. It can be intimidating to read a book with so many awards and find that your taste doesn't necessarily align. It can even make you question your own merit as a reader. But is that really a problem? Are you expected to like every award-winning book, or is it okay for something that people say is excellent to be a flop for you? For me, All the Birds in the Sky started out really strong. I love the character development. I thought it was excellent, and I was completely into it. It essentially follows two characters, Lawrence and Patricia. They're both young kids when we meet them, think like tweens, early teens. And Lawrence is essentially a nerdy geek who gets shoved into lockers. He's super smart and he's showing signs of masterful scientific prowess, but none of his friends see that about him and don't really care that he's super smart. Or friends is maybe an overstatement. None of his schoolmates. His big rebellion is sneaking away from school and not telling his parents that he's going to watch a rocket launch. Patricia, on the other hand, is just plain odd. The kids at school do not understand her at all. She has an older sister who makes her the brunt of everything, with great success towards their parents, and she's just weird. Early on in the novel, Patricia makes a discovery that's pretty pivotal. She can talk to animals, and one of those animals takes her to a tree in the forest who happens to also talk, and that tree lets her know that if she can talk to animals, that means she's a witch. So you've got a techno nerd and a witch teamed up. Years go by without Patricia being able to do anything else magical until one day she's in a dire situation and figures out she can just fly when she needs to. So things are really very strange for these two young people, and they connect over their weirdness. They're essentially the kind of friends who are not quite there through thick and thin for each other, but they are loyal to each other. For example, even though Lawrence is very frightened by Patricia's magical abilities that she shares with him, he never throws her under the bus. Whenever people make fun of her or tease about her, he refuses to participate. He doesn't necessarily defend her, but he won't badmouth her either. So there's some kind of loyalty between them. In fact, the thing that causes them to separate is schooling. Lawrence gets shipped off to military school, and Patricia is found by a magical being who realizes what her abilities are and offers to take her off to a school where she can learn to harness her magic. And essentially he gives her a do or die opportunity, and she says she has to help Lawrence one more time. So they really do sort of care about each other early on, and they're faithful to each other even though they're not really willing to fully stick their necks out for each other, but there's something that's clearly a bond as young children. We fast forward a bit to when the two are adult and essentially fully manifested in the lives that they hoped for. Now, Lawrence is working as a science wizard, and he's working with a woman who he met actually at the rocket launch as a child, and they are attempting to build a wormhole. You see, what's happening on Earth in this story is that there are vicious storms and terrible plagues, and there's war everywhere, and the planet is really kind of in dire straits. So they feel like if they can build this wormhole, they can find life elsewhere, and then they can get the elite parts of the population to safety and save them from Earth. Patricia at this point is a well-educated witch who knows how to use her powers and is part of an entire magical cohort that's also working on saving the planet. But their approach is really different. They want it to be much more holistic, and they want to include, for example, animals in the decision-making process. Patricia feels like every being on the planet should be considered, as opposed to Lawrence's approach, where really we should just worry about the best of the population. In spite of the fact that they have very different approaches, Lawrence and Patricia still can't deny their connection. They do have something that goes way back to their childhood, and even though they have opposing viewpoints, they really find that for each one, the other is the only person who truly understands them. It's not that they really argue about what's going on, but they just have this way of feeling at home with each other in a way they can't with anybody else. Now, there's one other major character to factor in here, and it's a kind of a weird character. But when Lawrence was a kid, he invented a computer, a self-learning computer. It's very reminiscent of ChatGPT, even though this kind of precedes that in history for the author. So Charlie Jane Anders was maybe a little ahead of her time, or was doing some very deep research before she wrote this book. The computer's known as Peregrine, and while Peregrine is designed from Lawrence's brain, Peregrine's primary input is actually Patricia. Lawrence gives Patricia access to chat with Peregrine early on, and she almost uses Peregrine like a therapist. So while Peregrine is created by Lawrence, he's really well informed by Patricia. And this AI computer essentially becomes the perfect blend of both Lawrence and Patricia. And he really functions, or it really functions, as a third character in the story. Peregrine is the perfect blend of magic and science, and he does a great job of showing how collaboration can be bigger than the sum of its parts. The book is narrated by Alyssa Bresnahan, who does an okay job. She's one of those narrators who doesn't really stick out, doesn't really have any flair, but also doesn't distract. She just sort of narrates the book. And she's effective. I didn't really think much about her as I was listening, and to me, a really bad narrator distracts you from the reading. I didn't find she did that. I would say she was really solid and really quality, but not like a standout favorite. I found this book really challenging. I love the beginning. The character-driven narrative was so excellent, and I was so invested in Lawrence and Patricia, as different as they were, and their connection to each other. But I had a lot of problem with this book because as it ramped up in intensity in plot and action, Patricia and Lawrence actually separate a little bit. And to have the characters whose connection is so pivotal to the beginning of the book be apart in space when all of the fancy stuff is going on kind of took me out of it. The second half of this book really fell flat for me because I was missing the thing that had made me invested in the first half. And that was really hard to get to the second half and find that the part I cared about was gone. As a reader, for me, that really took the energy of the book down, which was weird because as the events in the story were climaxing, essentially, I was getting disinterested. So you would think as a book ramps up in action, you'd get more into it, but I found the opposite. After I finished the book, I looked on Goodreads and saw that a friend of mine whose reading taste I really respect had read this and rated it a 3. I wouldn't quite put it that low. I would say it's more like a 3.5, but it's definitely not a 4 for me. Now, I found this book on a Reddit thread about books that people love and never hear recommended, and I might have found an anomaly because honestly, I don't think that many people are recommending it for a reason, which again is odd given how many awards it's won. I guess my point is that just because something has won a lot of awards doesn't mean you have to like it. It's okay for you to disagree with critics and even Reddit users. I'm not mad at the user who recommended it, but I just didn't agree. I think the writing was decent. Charlie Jane Anders definitely did a great job of character development, and I would consider reading more of her books, although even though she's written very many books, none of them are really as popular as this one, and since this one didn't really land for me, I don't know how far into her catalog I would try to go. If you love this book, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear why and what about it grabs you. But remember, you might love what I hate and hate what I love, so make your own opinion. But thanks for listening to mine. See you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.